Sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones we love the most. It's easy to say you're protecting someone. It's harder to realize when your protection starts to feel like a cage. This story isn't about villains. It's about good intentions, twisted by fear, pride, and the need for control. If you're a parent listening to this, please remember, love isn't about molding your child into the image you dreamed of. It's about seeing them, truly seeing them for who they are, and loving them without conditions. And if you're someone fighting to live your own truth, I hope you find the strength to choose yourself, even when it's the hardest thing in the world. This story, it's raw, it's messy, and it left scars I still carry. But maybe, just maybe, it's also about healing. Let me tell you what happened. I wasn't supposed to be downtown that night. I had plans, safe, predictable plans. But life has a way of laughing at our schedules. The sky cracked open without warning, dumping sheets of cold rain onto the streets. And before I could even pull out my phone to call another Uber, my ride canceled. There I was, standing alone, soaked through in less than 30 seconds. Mascara running, shoes slipping on the sidewalk like some sad movie cliche. I could have cried. Honestly, I almost did. But instead, I ducked into the first place I saw, a tiny bookstore tucked between a coffee shop and a boarded-up dry cleaner. I remember the smell hitting me first. Old paper, wood polish, a faint trace of vanilla from a candle burning somewhere behind the counter. I was dripping wet, shivering, trying not to ruin their floors, when I heard a voice behind me. Rough night? I turned around and saw him, Nicholas, tall, slightly messy brown hair, warm hazel eyes, wearing a faded flannel shirt like he belonged there, like he was stitched into the very fabric of the place. I managed a half laugh, half sob, and said something like, "Yeah, you could say that." Instead of making it awkward, he just smiled. That kind of smile that feels like a warm blanket, and asked if I needed a towel. I don't even remember saying yes, but a few minutes later, he handed me one, and we ended up standing by the bargain shelves, talking about the book I had picked up without thinking. Somehow, in between shivering and wiping rain from my face, we fell into the easiest conversation I'd ever had. Favorite childhood cartoons, the best sandwiches in town, why bookstores always smell better in the rain. We laughed a lot. I forgot how soaked and miserable I was. When the rain finally slowed to a drizzle, I thanked him, ready to slip back out into the night. But he stopped me. "Here," he said, handing me his umbrella. "Take it. Just bring it back sometime. He smiled again, that soft, impossible smile, and I swear something cracked open inside me. I didn't even know his last name yet. I didn't know he would be the person to flip my whole world upside down. But I knew I had to see him again. Somehow, some way, I had to find a reason to come back. I didn't know it then, but that rainy night wasn't just a cute story for later. It was the beginning of something real and something hard. Falling for Nicholas was the easy part. The real storm was everything that came after. I didn't know it then, but that rainy night wasn't just a cute story for later. It was the beginning of something real and something hard. Falling for Nicholas was the easy part. The real storm was everything that came after. After that night, I kept finding excuses to go back to the bookstore. Sometimes I would pretend I needed a new journal or a second copy of a book I already owned. It was pathetic, honestly, but he always smiled like he was happy to see me. We started texting, stupid little things at first, memes about coffee, terrible puns about the rain, random thoughts that would have seemed weird with anyone else. With Nicholas, it felt natural, easy, like breathing. He asked me out for coffee that weekend. I was so nervous, I changed my outfit 3 times before meeting him at this tiny cafe where the chairs wobbled and the coffee tasted like burnt hope. But it didn't matter. He was there, sitting in the corner, a book in one hand, his other hand tapping against the cup like he couldn't sit still because he was excited to see me. We talked for hours about nothing, about everything, about growing up, about dreams we didn't even know how to say out loud yet. He told me about his mom, how she worked double shifts at the hospital to put food on the table. I told him about my art school dreams, about how I always felt like the different one in my family, the one who colored outside the lines they tried so hard to draw. And somewhere between the third refill of terrible coffee and the way he laughed when I accidentally snorted, I realized I didn't want the night to end. Being with him felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for way too long. Over the next few weeks, we just slipped into each other's lives. Late night phone calls, random bookstore dates where we barely pretended to browse, cheap takeout eaten on park benches, silly little inside jokes that made no sense to anyone but us. Nicholas wasn't flashy. He wasn't rich. He didn't try to impress me with fang gestures. He impressed me by remembering the way I took my tea, by texting me good luck before every big test, by listening, really listening when I talked about my art like it actually mattered. It wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was slow, steady, real, and for the first time in a long time, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to fit into the mold everyone else expected of me. Maybe I could choose something, someone, for myself. I should have known it wouldn't be that easy. I should have known the people who raised me wouldn't just sit back and let me be happy. But back then, I was too busy falling to see the ground rushing up to meet me. You know, it's funny how, when you're falling in love, you don't really think about anything else. You don't see the warning signs. You don't hear the thunder rumbling in the distance. You just feel that rush, that hope, that wild, desperate belief that maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. I wish I could say it stayed that simple. But life and family have a way of testing the things you hold closest to your heart. If you're still with me, stay. Because what comes next, it changed everything. I really believed if they just met him, they would see what I saw. I mean, how could they not? Nicholas was kind. He was smart. He had this quiet strength about him, like no matter how hard life had hit him, he kept standing. I thought they would love him. I thought they would be happy for me. God, I was so naive. The first dinner was at my parents' house. I remember standing in the hallway, smoothing down my dress for the 5th time, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold on to my purse. Nicholas squeezed my hand and whispered, "It's gonna be fine." And I wanted so badly to believe him. When my mom opened the door, she smiled, that brittle, polite smile she used when she didn't actually like someone, but was too well-mannered to show it outright. She said, "Oh, you must be Nicholas," like she was meeting a new neighbor's dog. We barely made it 10 minutes into dinner before the first disaster struck. My mom accidentally spilled red wine all over Nicholas's shirt. And I mean, it wasn't a splash. It was a full glass, slow motion horror movie moment. He just laughed it off, because of course he did, and said, "Well, at least it wasn't my interview shirt." But the way my mom barely even apologized, the way she just tossed him a napkin and said, "Some stains never come out," like it was some kind of omen. It set something ugly in motion. After that night, the little comments started, subtle at first. Questions about his career plans, whether working in a bookstore was sustainable long-term, backhanded compliments like, "It's so refreshing to meet someone who isn't obsessed with ambition," said with that sweet, cutting smile. I tried to brush it off. I told myself they were just being protective, that they didn't know him yet, that if we gave it time, they would come around. But deep down, a part of me already knew. They didn't want to understand him. They didn't want to see the man I had fallen in love with. They wanted me to choose between the safe, polished future they had mapped out for me and the messy, beautiful unknown I was building with Nicholas. At the time, I still thought I could have both. I still thought love would be enough. I didn't realize yet, some battles you fight not against strangers, but against the people you love the most. I kept telling myself it was just awkwardness, that they'd warm up to him if we gave it time. But deep down, I felt it, that cold creeping weight in my chest. Their smiles were just masks, and behind them, they were already making plans to tear everything apart. I just didn't know how far they'd go. It started small. My mom would send me helpful articles, stuff like The Danger of Settling Too Young, or Signs You're Being Held Back by Your Partner. Every link was a dagger wrapped in sugar. Just something to think about, sweetie, she'd say, her voice all lightness and innocence, like she wasn't trying to dig under my skin and plant seeds of doubt. And maybe the cruelest part was, for a while, it worked. I started second-guessing things that never used to bother me. Was it weird that Nicholas didn't have a 5-year career plan mapped out? Shouldn't he be more ambitious? Was love enough when the world we lived in demanded so much more? I hated myself for even thinking it. But when you're drowning in other people's expectations, it gets harder and harder to hear your own voice. Then came the second dinner, another perfectly set table, another night of polite knives hidden in smiles, and somehow another accidental glass of red wine dumped all over Nicholas. I can still see it, the slow motion horror of that dark stain blooming across his shirt, the quick flicker of hurt in his eyes before he masked it with that easygoing laugh he used like armor. My mom's fake apologies. My dad's smirk behind his wine glass. Me sitting there, too stunned, too furious, too broken to even move. After dinner, Nicholas squeezed my hand so tight I thought my bones might snap, and he whispered, "It's okay, I can handle it." But he shouldn't have had to. God, he shouldn't have had to. And yet, it wasn't until I found the dating profiles that the full weight of what they were doing finally hit me. I wasn't snooping, I swear, I wasn't. I just needed to look something up on my mom's iPad. And there they were. Profile after profile, my face smiling back at me like a stranger. Bios about how I was seeking a stable, successful man with strong family values. Carefully selected photos, not the goofy ones with Nicholas, of course, but the polished ones, the ones that made me look like the kind of girl who fit into the life they wanted for me. I stared at the screen for so long, I forgot how to breathe. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the tablet. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. She didn't even apologize. She just smiled, that same brittle, suffocating smile, and said, "I'm just keeping your options open, sweetheart. You'll thank me later." Thank her? Thank her for selling out my life like it was some prize to be auctioned off to the highest bidder. I felt something inside me snap. The girl who always tried to be polite, to be the good daughter, to smooth everything over. She was gone. I slammed my hand down on the counter so hard the ceramic spoon rest shattered into pieces. My voice shook with rage when I said, "This is my life, my heart, not yours to manage, not yours to trade away." She blinked at me like I was some unruly child throwing a tantrum. My dad came in then, hearing the noise, looking at me like I was the problem, like I was the one tearing the family apart. But in that moment, for the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought. I only cared about what was right. And if standing up for myself meant standing alone, then so be it. I thought standing up for myself would be enough. I thought maybe they'd finally hear me. But the thing about control is, once people have tasted it, they don't give it up without a fight. What happened next broke me in ways I didn't even know I could break. Stay with me, it's about to get even harder. It happened the night I stopped by their house to help my dad set up his new laptop. I wasn't planning on staying long. I just wanted to do my duty, be polite, get out before the tension swallowed me whole. But life doesn't work that neatly. I had just gotten up to grab a glass of water when I heard them talking. Their voices were low, sharp, like they were plotting something, not just chatting over dinner. And then I heard it, heard my dad's voice, cold and certain, say, "That boy is just using her. He sees her as a ticket out." My heart stopped. I stood there, frozen, glass slipping from my fingers, shattering on the tile like the last fragile piece of my childhood. They both rushed in, eyes wide, but when they saw me standing there, shaking, tears blurring everything, they didn't apologize. They didn't even look guilty. My dad doubled down, voice hard as stone, telling me they were only concerned about my future, that I deserved someone from our circle, that Nicholas would drag me down. I remember everything I said. I just remember the feeling, this white, hot fury flooding my chest, mixing with something so much sadder underneath. I told them they didn't know him. I told them they didn't know me anymore if they thought I could be bought that easily. My mom tried to step in, tried to soften it, saying they were just protecting me from making a mistake. But the thing is, love isn't a mistake. Trusting someone with your heart isn't a mistake. Thinking your parents would stand by you, that was the real mistake. And then came the ultimatum. My dad looked me straight in the eye, voice flat, almost bored, like he was reading off a business contract. Either I ended things with Nicholas, or they would cut me off completely. No tuition help, no insurance, no more safety net. Just cold, clean abandonment. For a second, I almost caved. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. The fear, the loneliness, the very real possibility that I wasn't strong enough to do this on my own. But then I thought about Nicholas, about every small thing he had done, not for attention, not for applause, but on because he loved me. And I realized I would rather be broke, scared, and alone with him than rich, comfortable, and dead inside with them. So I looked my father, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who used to carry me on his shoulders, right in the eye, and said, "Then I guess you're cutting me off." I grabbed my bag. My mom tried to stop me, sobbing, pleading, but I didn't stop. I walked out that door with nothing but my pride and my heart still intact. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I finally understood what it meant to choose myself. Survival isn't glamorous. It's raw. It's lonely. It's waking up every morning, still bruised, still scared, and choosing to fight anyway. I thought the worst was over once I walked away. But the real test wasn't just surviving without them. It was learning how to build something better. Stay with me, because this is where the story starts to change. Survival wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Slowly, painfully, I started piecing myself back together. It didn't happen overnight. It happened in tiny, brutal victories that no one clapped for. Waking up before sunrise to finish freelance work before my shift at the cafe. Choking down another bowl of instant noodles because groceries had to stretch another 3 days. Saying no to the 100 little doubts that whispered maybe they were right about me after all. I poured everything I had into my classes. Every paper, every project, every tiny chance to prove, if only to myself, that I was still standing. When my final grades came in, I didn't even check them right away. I was too scared. After everything, what if I had failed? What if all the sacrifice had been for nothing? Nicholas sat beside me on our battered couch, laptop balanced on his knees, his hand wrapped around mine so tightly it almost hurt. "Whatever it says," he whispered, "you didn't fail. You fought. You survived. That's what matters." I opened the email with my heart in my throat, and there it was, Dean's list. After everything, the nights I cried over textbooks, the shifts that bled into dawn, the days I thought about giving up, I made it. I made it. Nicholas whooped so loudly, the neighbors banged on the wall. I cried until my face hurt. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like a failure. I felt powerful. Like maybe, just maybe, I could build a life on my own terms. Around the same time, Nicholas's boss, the grumpy old man who owned the bookstore, offered him a real chance. Not just extra hours, management, a real salary, benefits. The kind of stability neither of us dared to dream about 6 months ago. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't some six-figure miracle, but it was ours. We celebrated by buying a real dinner, pizza with extra cheese and 2 sodas, because we weren't splitting one anymore to save money. And maybe it sounds silly, but sitting across from Nicholas in that sticky booth, greasy cardboard boxes between us, I felt richer than I ever had sitting at my parents' marble dining table. With our combined incomes, we started dreaming again. Not big dreams, not yet, just simple ones. A place with a bedroom door that closed. A kitchen where 2 people could stand without bumping into each other. A life we built without anyone else's money or permission. We scraped together enough for a deposit on a tiny 1-bedroom apartment. It smelled like old carpet, and the faucet dripped. But when we signed that lease, I wanted to scream and cry and laugh all at once. Because this wasn't just 4 walls and a key. It was proof. Proof that love without money, without connections, without approval, could still be enough. Proof that I didn't need to be someone else's perfect daughter, perfect student, perfect anything to deserve happiness. I was never going back. I didn't need saving. I had already saved myself. Healing doesn't mean you forget. It means you learn how to live with the cracks without letting them define you. I thought I'd left it all behind. The anger, the sadness, the need for their approval. But sometimes the past has a way of finding you again. Stay with me. This part, it matters. Graduation day came faster than I expected. 1 minute, I was scraping together tuition with freelance gigs and half-dead coffee shifts. The next, I was standing in front of a mirror, trying to pin my cap onto hair that refused to cooperate, hands shaking so badly I nearly gave up and wore it crooked. Nicholas stood behind me, quiet, steady, just watching. "You're going to be amazing," he said, and even though my stomach was a knot of nerves, somehow I believed him. Part of me didn't want my parents there. Part of me craved it. That tiny, broken piece of me that still wanted to be seen, to be enough. I didn't call. I didn't beg. I just sent the ceremony invite and waited. They showed up. I spotted them tucked into the back row, stiff and uncomfortable, like they had wandered into the wrong room but were too proud to leave. My mom in a designer dress, my dad in his usual perfect suit. No signs, no cheers, no smiles, just blank faces, watching from a distance. And somehow, it didn't break me. For the first time, I realized their approval wasn't the prize anymore. I was the prize. When my name was called and I walked across that stage, cap crooked, hands trembling, I didn't look for them. I looked for Nicholas. And there he was, grinning like a fool, clapping so loud I thought his hands might break. Sharon was beside him, wiping her eyes with a crumpled tissue. They were my family now. After the ceremony, my parents approached. My mom tried to hug me. I stepped back without thinking, the look on her face, that flash of hurt she couldn't hide. It twisted something inside me, but not enough to make me regret it. "We're proud of you," she said, her voice too bright, too careful. My dad just nodded, stiff and silent. I mumbled a polite thank you, but in my heart, I knew they weren't proud of me. They were proud of the image they could still cling to, a daughter in a cap and gown, something neat and presentable they could tell their friends about. Sharon rushed over a second later, pulling me into a real hug, the kind that didn't care if my makeup smeared or if my cap fell off. "I'm so proud of you, honey," she whispered, squeezing me tight. My parents stood there, watching. And for once, I didn't care. A few days later, they texted me, inviting me to a proper celebration at some overpriced restaurant, the kind of place where the walls smelled like money and everyone spoke in hushed voices. I said no, politely, firmly. I didn't owe them a performance anymore. I didn't owe them anything. When the guilt texts started rolling in, paragraphs about how I was throwing away my future, about how they only wanted what was best for me, I muted the conversation without a second thought. And you know what I did instead? I went home, to our little apartment where the windows stuck and the floors creaked and the walls were too thin. I cracked open a can of cheap paint Nicholas and I had bought on sale, and I started painting our kitchen walls. Messy strokes, laughter echoing around me, hope dripping right alongside the paint. Every mark I made was a promise. I would never again trade pieces of myself just to make someone else comfortable. I would never again let anyone decide what kind of life I deserved. I was still here. I was still fighting. And for the first time, I was finally building something that was mine. You know, sometimes when you're fighting so hard just to survive, you don't even realize how much you've grown, how much you've already won. But the people who love you, the ones who are truly watching, we see it. So maybe it's time you heard the rest of the story. From someone who's been standing quietly in the background, heart full of pride. Stay with me, because what comes next, you need to hear. Building a life from nothing. It doesn't happen with some grand, movie-worthy moment. It happens one small, stubborn choice at a time. Choosing to wake up when you're exhausted. Choosing to keep going when no one's clapping. Choosing to believe you deserve more. Even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. After graduation, things didn't magically get easier. Rent was still high. Groceries were still a constant math equation. Nicholas and I scrimped and saved, fixing up our little apartment one tiny paycheck at a time. We patched leaky faucets. We painted over old stains. We made a home out of chipped tiles and second-hand furniture. And somehow, through all the chaos, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. Not because someone was cushioning my fall, but because I knew, really knew, that even if everything else collapsed tomorrow, I would still have myself. A few months after moving in, I got a call. It was my mom. She left a voicemail, bright, brittle, carefully casual, talking about family gatherings, how everyone missed me, how we should catch up. I listened to it twice, not because I was tempted to go back, but because I wanted to really hear it, without guilt blurring my ears. I didn't call her back, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because I finally understood something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't a hurt little girl begging to be seen. I had built a life they couldn't control, a life they didn't get to walk into just because it was convenient again. One Saturday, Nicholas and I were cleaning out the closet when I stumbled across a box I hadn't touched since moving day. Inside were little pieces of my old life, fancy invitations to parties I never wanted to attend, glossy family photos where I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt, brochures for the kinds of colleges my parents wanted me to choose. I sat there on the dusty floor, running my fingers over those old artifacts. And instead of crying, I smiled, because I wasn't that girl anymore. The girl who twisted herself into knots for approval. The girl who thought love had to be earned with obedience and good grades and the right kind of boyfriend. She was gone. In her place was someone messier, stronger, realer, someone who chose love, real love, not based on bloodlines or expectations, but on kindness, patience, and the quiet bravery of staying when things got hard. That night, Nicholas and I sat on our tiny balcony, legs tangled together, drinking cheap wine from mismatched mugs, because neither of us remembered to buy proper glasses. We talked about everything we wanted to do next. Dreams that once felt impossible now felt just out of reach, but reachable. I looked at him, at us, and I realized this wasn't the life my parents had imagined for me. It was better. It was real. It was mine. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was running away from something. I felt like I was finally running toward something that was always meant to be mine. Some stories end with a bang, some end with heartbreak. Mine, it didn't end at all. It just unfolded into something quieter, stronger, more real than I ever thought I deserved. Stay with me, because there's one last thing I need to tell you. It's been a few years now. Sometimes I still catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, for it all to fall apart the way it used to. But it doesn't. Not because life got easier, but because I got stronger. Nicholas and I made it. We saved, hustled, fought for every tiny dream until they weren't dreams anymore. They were memories we built with our own hands. The bookstore he once managed, it's his now. We scraped together a down payment, fixed the wiring, remodeled the front with second-hand shelves and handmade signs. It's not fancy, but it's ours. A place where kids pile onto beanbags and old men argue about baseball stats between the history aisles. A place that smells like coffee, paper, and the stubborn kind of hope you can't buy. As for me, I built my freelance work into a real career. Somewhere along the way, I picked up clients who trusted me, respected me, paid me what I was worth. I opened a little studio. Nothing big, just a cozy corner with sunlight pouring in the windows and paint smudges on the walls. Sometimes when I unlock the door in the morning, I still can't believe it's mine. Money isn't a constant fear anymore. We bought a house last year, a fixer-upper with creaky floors, a wild, overgrown garden, and a front porch big enough for summer nights and endless cups of coffee. It's not perfect, neither are we, but it's full of laughter, music, the clatter of dishes, arguments over paint colors, surprise flowers left on the kitchen counter for no reason at all. It's a life stitched together from late nights, second chances, and love that never asked me to be anything but myself. My parents, they're still them, stiff, distant, clinging to their version of how life should look. We talk sometimes, holiday texts, awkward phone calls. I'm polite, I'm kind, but I keep my heart safe now. They don't get to rewrite history. They don't get to claim my victories. Those belong to me. Every scraped knee, every lonely night, every tiny, stubborn choice to believe I deserved better. It all led here. So if you're listening to this, if you're standing where I once stood, scared, hurt, wondering if walking away is worth the price, let me be the voice you needed to hear. You're not selfish for choosing yourself. You're not wrong for believing you deserve love that doesn't come with strings. It will be hard. It will be lonely. But one day, you'll wake up in a life you built with your own two hands. And you'll realize you didn't lose everything. You found yourself. And honestly, that's the richest, fullest, most beautiful thing there is.